Thank you very much. So, listen, I won't even try to follow that act of the pastor, and I will humbly just try to inform you about the situation in Israel. I was very fortunate to be able to get on one of the first planes leaving Israel after our short episode with the Iranians, and I think there was some kind of intervention that helped that happen. But very, very honored and humbled to stand before you today, again to have the privilege to speak at your magnificent gathering, and truly happy to be able to represent unofficially a little bit about what's going on in Israel and carry a message to you great people here. So I totally agree with what the pastor said, everything, especially about victory, especially about the need and the will to persevere and to stick through it when times are tough. And believe me, times have been very, very tough in Israel for the last year and a half. But that is exactly when metal is measured, and that is exactly when you know what you're made of. I know that Israel is made of truth. I know that Israel is made of love, and I know that eventually we will be victorious. So we're celebrating 20 years of the CUFI summit, and this last year, what a tremendous year it's been. I've heard, and as you've seen on the media, I'm exposed to a lot of media. I've seen Christians United for Israel maligned, ridiculed, treated with contempt and distrust by many elites and much of the American established media. People in this room and the amazing 11 million of your followers have been scoffed at and marginalized, yet you have prevailed, and today's reality is proof that your faith, devotion, and patience have shaped reality, and I believe that it will continue to do so. This is a glorious moment in Israeli and American history. American dominance in the Middle East and in the world has been reconfirmed and reestablished. American weapon systems and tech in Israeli hands have been proven to be the best in the region, maybe the best in the world, against what many believed was a superior and much feared enemy. Today, when the US president makes an offer or a threat, I don't think that there's anyone in the Middle East who would think of seriously contemplating to defy it. And that fact, ladies and gentlemen, is thanks to the unprecedented military and political cooperation between the United States and Israel, which is the US most close and trustworthy ally in the Middle East. What the world witnessed was a display of intelligence, aerial dominance, skill, and precision by Israel and the United States, and the cunning Iranians were both outsmarted and surprised by it. Even though it came at a heavy price for Israel, 27 of our civilians were murdered, aging between 6 and 95, and one off-duty soldier killed in his home, I'm happy that at least no American servicemen were even wounded in conducting their missions so brilliantly. Now, last year when I was here, I was a different man, and the situation in the land of Israel was different. We were still a wounded lion, still reeling from the murder and capture of our civilians by Hamas, and we were still fighting actively on 7 fronts in order to defend ourselves and our very existence. We had not yet turned the tide on Iran's most lethal and dangerous proxy in Lebanon, Hezbollah. We had not yet eliminated, and bear with me, I'll say a lot of Arabic names now, we had not yet eliminated Ismail Haniyeh, Hassan Nasrallah, Muhammad Def, Yahya Sinwar, Fuad Shukr, or Ibrahim Akil. These kingpins of Iranian terror walk along us no more. A year ago, the Syrian regime was still facilitating attacks and harboring Iranian troops and weapons that were used against Israel. Since then, that regime has been overthrown, and today there is a glimmer of hope for a better future for Syria and for the region. Hope that we have to be careful about, but there's still hope. A year ago, Hezbollah reigned supreme in Lebanon and exploited that country at the behest of their Iranian masters. Today, the brave Lebanese government, with US diplomatic and military backing, is seeking to disarm Hezbollah, to check its military power, and to allow it to only be a political party and never again to be a militant force in Lebanon. A year ago, Hamas probably thought that Israel would crumble under immense international pressure, including from our closest friends, and that Hamas would get away with the murder, rape, torture, and humiliation of thousands of Israelis. Today, while not yet defeated, I think that the remaining Hamas leadership has a more realistic and dire view. And they probably admit to themselves that the Jews are far stronger and resilient than they ever imagined. All of this happened thanks to the bravery and skill of the IDF, Mossad, Shabak, and countless men and women in uniform who have fought, bled, and died to defeat Israel's enemies and keep our nation safe. We will forever be in their debt. A year ago, we were still surrounded by the ring of fire that the Iranian regime spent more than 20 years and countless of billions of dollars to build, fund, and arm. Its only purpose, to weaken Israel sufficiently over the years and then go in for the final blow in order to eliminate the Jewish state. Many years ago, I think it's 13 or 14 years, I remember watching a clip on YouTube of Pastor Hagee himself urging Christians to stand up and support Israel for Zion's sake. Because at the time, the Iranian president was an exceptionally extreme and outspoken hater of Israel, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, and he was the first Iranian president to say out loud and in the open what the regime had been planning for many years and still wishes to achieve, which is the destruction of the state of Israel. Pastor Hagee was right at that time to sound the alarm and rally the believers in support of Israel's defense. And I thank him for doing it that time. Pastor Hagee and Christians United for Israel, the Jewish people owes you a tremendous debt of gratitude for your steadfast support, for your leadership and vision in defending the nation-state of the Jewish people, and I want to thank all of you, brave brothers and sisters, for standing up with Israel over these years. Now is our moment. For 25 years, The Iranian regime has been implementing a clear and coherent strategy of expansion, violence, and terror in the Middle East. They haven't limited themselves to the Middle East, by the way. You can see them in Europe and even in the continental United States. They got used to being in the driving seat. They got used to bullying and oppressing people and minorities, both inside Iran and outside of it. And while squandering the national resources of Iran itself, that regime sought to build weapons of mass destruction. They studied and implemented the lessons of Iraq and Syria, and they built a heavily fortified, clandestine, and hardened nuclear weapons program. Instead of promoting the welfare of the Iranian people, instead of providing water, electricity, education, or hope for more than 90 million Iranians, the regime spent billions of dollars on funding various terror organizations and building a nuclear weapons program. As I see it, and I think that many of you will agree, the Iranian regime in its current form is a cancer. First and foremost, against its own people, but also against Israel, against Arab countries in the Middle East, against the West, and against the United States of America. This cancer was administered a healthy dose of chemotherapy in the shape of F-35, F-15, and B-2 bombers. And those planes soared through the skies of Iran and struck military and regime targets at will. The Iranian nuclear weapons program has indeed suffered a significant blow, and only time will tell how long it will take the Iranians to recover and at what price. We don't know that yet. But just like any other cancer, one type of treatment usually doesn't do the job. The regime has already announced in the past days that it will do the following. Iran will continue to attempt to enrich uranium on Iranian soil. It will continue to aspire to destroy the so-called Zionist entity, their name for Israel. And yesterday, the two most senior Islamic clerics issued fatwas, religious decrees or edicts, that practically call for the assassination of the President of the United States of America. They have also called for the imprisonment and execution of the head of the UN Atomic Agency, Mr. Rafael Grossi, and they're threatening to stop cooperating with international inspections. In his defiant so-called victory speech, Supreme Leader Khamenei threatened President Trump, he threatened the US, Europe, and of course Israel. Funny, I always thought that victory speeches were delivered in front of masses above ground, not from bunkers. But I guess the Iranians have a different sense of victory. As long as this regime exists, we will not know peace in the Middle East. As long as this regime exists, they will prioritize the destruction of the nation state of the Jewish people over the prosperity of their own people. That is why I stand before you today and urge you to understand the opportunity at hand. In its current shape and leadership, this Iranian regime has no right to exist. And if you want a future of peace and prosperity for all of God's children in the Middle East, I can think of no more consequential event than the demise of this regime. Now is not the time, as the pastor says, to rest on our laurels, but to remain firmly committed to lasting security and peace in the Middle East. I believe it is attainable. Sustained and severe pressure across the board must be applied to the Iranian regime until it changes its ways, ceases to aspire to obtain nuclear weapons, and commits to focusing its resources and energy on the Iranian people instead of on terrorism and violence. I think that's a very fair demand. If it doesn't, if the Iranians refuse, that regime should face the combined might of the United States and of Israel and all other peace-loving nations on earth. However, only the Iranian people can topple that regime, and only they should shape the future of their country. But after decades of oppression, they will need external help. My friends, we all know that words have meaning and prayers matter. We see that before us, we see it turn into reality. Therefore, together, I think we need to focus on the following. I think we need to maintain and strengthen the alliance between the US and Israel, which has proven to serve the interests and needs of both countries exceedingly well. Those challenging this alliance come from within as well as the usual detractors. We should be wary of them. We should also target the Iranian regime and force it either to change its wicked ways or to be undone. We should defeat Hamas in Gaza and free the remaining 50 Israeli hostages. Indeed, bring them home, all of them. Indeed, we want to see them home, repatriated with their families, those that are alive for healing, surrounded by loved ones, and those that unfortunately were murdered to be brought to proper burial and for their family to have a tomb to cry on. So we should defeat Hamas, free the remaining 50 Israeli hostages, and then start the long process of rebuilding Israeli communities and then the Gaza Strip, together with regional and global partners. We should seek and bravely promote peace in the region between the descendants of Abraham, without allowing the Palestinians or their henchmen to derail it as they've done in the past. And last but not least, we must continue to fiercely defend Judeo-Christian values, democracy, and common decency in the media, on our streets, on campuses, and online. In closing, I hope to return here next year. I hope to return here next year and celebrate the achievements that we will accomplish together. I dream of kindergartens in Nahal Oz and Metula, close to Gaza and close to Lebanon. I dream of them full of smiling Israeli children who feel safe in their homes where their families prosper. That's what I dream about. I yearn for closure and comfort for the families of the hostages after the return of their loved ones. I wish for all the Israeli soldiers to go back to training after having defeated Hamas and Palestinian terrorists successfully and decisively on the battlefield. I hope for a united Israel, because strength comes from unity. I hope for a united Israel that puts politics and sectarianism aside and focuses on building, creating, and strengthening our homeland. And I hope, maybe I'm a little bit naive, but I still hope and pray for it, that Israel will receive the support and gratitude that it deserves from the West and the world, from being the bulwark defending democracy and light against barbarism and darkness, because that is what Israel is. And seeing the tremendous achievements of CUFI so far, I believe we can do all of this and more, and I can't wait to see what will happen in this year. Thank you very much. Thank you.